Okay, so I want you to picture something for a second. The standard American dream, right?
Right. You work hard for, what, 40 years? Pay off the house?
Exactly. You tuck money away, you play by the rules. And the assumption, this kind of default plan that we all have, is that when you're gone, all that effort,
Yeah.
it just automatically catches the people you love.
It's like an unspoken contract, right? You build it, they get the keys. Simple.
So simple. But the sources we've been reading for this deep dive,
Yeah.
wow. They just take that assumption and completely dismantle it.
Mm-hmm.
They describe this scenario where instead of a smooth handover, your family is looking at like a 2-year timeout. It's not just time. We're talking about a system that could legally take up to 20% of everything you own.
Before your family sees a dime.
Yeah.
It sounds like a conspiracy theory when you just say it out loud like that.
It really does.
But the data shows this is just standard procedure. It's not a bug. It is the system.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are tackling a topic that I know usually makes people's eyes glaze over estate planning. But honestly, after going through this stack of sources from this platform called claimalegacy.com and a really intense seminar transcript, this reads less like a legal manual and more like a thriller.
It really does. You've got, secret court proceedings, family feuds, government overreach, and now this tech disruption that's trying to flip the whole industry on its head.
So our mission today is pretty straightforward. We're going to decode this villain called the probate system. We're going to figure out why that tool most of us rely on, a simple will, might actually be a trap.
And then we'll look at how technology is trying to be the TurboTax of estate planning to fix it all.
And that TurboTax comparison is so important because just like with taxes, if you don't have a plan.
Oh, the government has one for you. And spoiler alert, their plan is public, it's slow, and it is incredibly expensive.
So let's start there, with the villain. The sources keep hammering this one word, probate. I feel like most people have heard the word. We know it's bad, but what is it exactly?
So looking at the seminar transcript, the speaker gives this definition that's clearly designed to make you uncomfortable.
Okay.
He calls probate, and I'm quoting here, a lawsuit you file against yourself paid for by your own money for the benefit of your creditors.
Wow. A lawsuit against yourself. That's bleak.
It's stark, but it's technically accurate. In, plain English, probate is just the court process where a judge decides who gets your stuff after you die.
But hold on. I own my stuff. My name's on the house. It's on the bank account.
Right.
Why does a judge need to get involved at all?
Because you're not there to sign for it anymore. See, while you're alive, your signature is everything. You can sell the house, you can move the money, but the moment you pass away, if your name is the only one on that title, that asset is frozen.
The source called it jail for your money.
Exactly. It's in legal limbo. So the court has to step in, take custody, and then figure out who gets what. And that validation takes time. A lot of time.
Let's talk about the cost, because the numbers in these sources they're staggering. They mention states like Arizona, where the courts and attorneys can take a huge chunk.
We're looking at anywhere from 6 to 22% of the total gross estate value. And I really want to emphasize gross.
Explain that. Why does gross matter so much?
Okay, so let's say you have a house worth $500,000, but you still owe $400,000 on the mortgage. Your equity is only $100,000, right?
Right. That's what I actually own.
You'd think the fees would be based on that $100,000, but in probate, the fees are often calculated on the market value, the full $500,000.
Ouch. So the lawyers are getting a percentage of money that actually belongs to the bank.
Precisely. So on a pretty modest estate, say that $500,000 house and some savings, you could easily see $100,000 just vanish into the legal system. Money that was supposed to be for college, for retirement, gone.
And it's not just the money, it's the time. You said it takes a long time. What are we talking about?
The transcript says anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. And 2 years seems to be pretty common for anything even a little complicated.
There's a story in the transcript about this, about a woman named Sarah, that just perfectly illustrates the human cost of that delay.
Yeah, the Sarah story it's just heartbreaking because she did everything right by normal standards. Single mom, owned a home worth about $450,000, had some savings. She passes away, leaves 2 teenagers.
And you'd assume that money would immediately go to support them.
That's the whole point, right, to protect them. But because all her assets were locked in probate, those kids couldn't touch a dime for 2 years.
2 years. What happened?
They needed money for, daily life, for college tuition. But the accounts were frozen. They missed payments. The source says the stress caused huge fights between the siblings. And when the money finally came through, $92,000 had been eaten by fees.
92,000.
And the kids just felt like the system had literally stolen their inheritance.
It changes the whole memory, doesn't it? It's not mom left us this gift. It's mom left us this huge mess.
Exactly. And the real kicker is Sarah probably thought she was covered. She probably thought, I have a will.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this brings us to the most controversial part of the source material, the myth of the will. I feel like if you asked 10 people on the street, how do you protect your family? 9 of them are going to say, oh, I have a will. I'm safe.
And according to these sources, those 9 people are walking right into the trap. The expert in the transcript is very blunt. He says a will is designed for probate.
That just feels so wrong. I always thought a will was the get-out-of-jail-free card.
It's the opposite. It's the admission ticket to the jail. Think about it. What is a will? It's a letter to a judge. It says, "Dear Judge, please give my car to my brother." But for that to happen, the judge has to validate it.
So the will has no power on its own.
None, until a court says it does. So by its very nature, a will guarantees you go to court.
So it's basically just a wish list you hand to the government.
That's a great way to put it. And here's the darker side the source points out. A will invites claims.
What does that mean? Invites claims.
Because probate is public, it gives people a forum to argue. The transcript tells a story about the speaker's grandfather, Grandpop. He had a will, but he also had 14 kids.
Oh boy. 14 kids and 1 will. I can see this coming.
It went exactly where you'd think. One uncle, just one, had some tiny, petty disagreement. But because the estate was in probate court, he could contest the will. And that one objection dragged the whole family into a 2-year legal battle.
Over a petty grievance.
That's what court does. It gives everyone a microphone. It costs the family tens of thousands, but the real cost, the relationships. The source says the family just never recovered. Siblings stopped talking. Thanksgiving was over. All because the will opened the door for a fight.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
But there's another layer to this that I found even more disturbing, and that's privacy. You said probate is public.
Yes, this is a detail people just don't think about. When you
Yeah.
go through probate, your entire financial life, everything you owned, who you owed money to, who gets your money, it all becomes public record.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone can see it. Scammers, nosy neighbors.
A shopping list for con artists.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's a story in the source material about this, about a couple, Tom and Sheila,
Yeah.
and this one was just awful to read.
This is the most charged case in the whole stack. So
Yeah.
Tom owned a business, a nice home, worth about $2.8 million. He and Sheila had been partners, lived together for 25 years. But, and this is the key detail, they weren't married. And he never put her name on the title to the house or the business.
The classic, I'll get around to a trap.
Exactly. He meant to set up a trust. And then, tragedy. Tom dies in a car crash.
And with no marriage certificate and no trust.
Legally, she was a stranger. The source describes this scene where Sheila is sitting at her kitchen table and she slides a letter from the probate court across the table. She was being evicted.
Evicted from the home she lived in for 25 years.
Yes. Because without her name on the title, the house was just an asset. It didn't matter that they loved each other. The law is binary.
And the business too, right?
It destroyed it. She couldn't access the business accounts to pay suppliers, to make payroll. She had to shut it down. All that value, all that work just evaporated.
And the indignity of it.
Yeah.
The source mentions auditors.
Strangers.
Yeah.
Going through her closets, her drawers to inventory Tom's assets. Imagine that. You've just lost your partner and you have government auditors rifling through your underwear drawer because it's now public record.
Okay, so probate is the villain. The will is its henchman. There has to be a hero in this story, right? The sources point to a revocable living trust.
Right. And trust is a word that sounds expensive. It sounds like something for billionaires. But the expert in the transcript uses a really simple analogy. He says to think of a trust as a bulletproof container, like a family safe.
A safe. Okay, I can picture that. How does it work?
So you create this high-tech safe. While you're alive, you own it, you have the combination, you retitle your assets, your house, your car, your accounts into the name of the trust. You're basically putting them inside the safe.
Does that change anything for me day to day? Can I still sell my house?
That's the revocable part. Total control. You can take things out, put things in, sell them. Nothing changes. You're the trustee of your own safe.
Okay, so I'm the trustee. Then what happens when I die?
This is the magic trick. When you pass away, you don't own the assets anymore. The safe owns them. And the safe doesn't die.
So there's no transfer of ownership for a judge to oversee?
Precisely. Because the owner of the trust is still alive, there's nothing for the court to freeze. The successor trustee, the person you picked, just gets the combination to the safe, opens it, and follows your instructions. No court, no judge, no 2-year wait.
It seems so simple when you explain it like that. The source contrasts Tom and Sheila with another couple, Mike and Lisa.
Right. Mike had a trust. When he passed, it was a completely different story. Within weeks, checks were going to the kids, the house transferred smoothly, no public record, no auditors. The kids felt loved and supported, not robbed.
There's also this feature they mentioned called control from the grave. Sounds a little spooky.
It does, but it's really practical. With a will, it's usually just a lump sum. Here's your money, good luck. But with a trust, you can set conditions.
Like what?
Well, say you have a beneficiary who's not great with money, or maybe has an addiction issue. The last thing you want is to give them $100,000 in cash. With a trust, you can say, give them $1,000 a month for rent, or pay the landlord directly.
Or for a child with special needs.
That's huge. You can set up a fund so they get support without losing their government benefits. It lets you keep protecting them even when you're not there.
That's a powerful idea. But,
Oh, yeah.
we've been talking about death this whole time. But the source material makes this really aggressive pivot. It says, death isn't the only risk.
This is the living nightmare section. And honestly, this might be even more important. The source asks, what if you don't die? What if you have a stroke or dementia or a bad car accident?
I think most people just assume their spouse can automatically make decisions, that default plan again.
And that's a dangerous assumption. If you're incapacitated and you don't have the right documents, like a financial power of attorney, your family is locked out. They can't access your retirement accounts to pay for your care. They have to go to court and get a conservatorship.
And that sounds humiliating, based on the description.
You have to put your own loved one on trial to prove to a judge they're incompetent. Then every dollar you spend has to be reported to the court. It's public.
The source brings up a really famous case to illustrate this. Terry Schiavo. I remember that being on the news constantly.
That case is the perfect example of why this matters. She was young, 27, she collapsed, ended up on life support. Because she had no instructions, no living will, her husband and her parents disagreed on what to do.
And because it wasn't written down.
They fought in court for 15 years. 15 years of legal battles, politicians weighing in. It destroyed the family.
So a trust isn't just one document. The source lists 4 key things that come with it to prevent that situation.
Right, it's a whole package. You get the medical power of attorney who makes health choices, then the financial power of attorney who pays your bills.
Okay.
Third is the conservatorship language inside the trust itself, which keeps it a family matter and avoids the judge. And fourth is the living will, your instructions on life support. It prevents that guilt and cost of the Schiavo situation.
So it's a complete shield for death and incapacity.
Which brings us to the big question.
Huh.
If this is so amazing, why doesn't everyone have one? The barrier has always been access and cost. To do this the old way, you're talking about expensive lawyers, taking time off work, thousands of dollars up front.
$5,000-$6,000 maybe?
Easily. It's just a high barrier to entry.
And this is where ClaimMyLegacy.com comes in. They're positioning themselves as the TurboTax for this whole industry.
That's their whole pitch. They use technology to remove the friction. The website describes a plain English interview. You don't need to know legal terms. You just answer questions about your life, and the software builds the framework.
But, and this is a key distinction, it's not just a robot doing it. They talk about a hybrid model.
Yes, and that's important. It's tech-driven for speed and cost, but the final documents are drafted and reviewed by actual estate planning attorneys. They say it's compliant in all 50 states. So you get the speed of software with the safety of a real lawyer.
And the price difference. We said probate could cost $100,000.
Contrast that with the price mentioned in the source for using their service. They're talking around $1,795 or even a subscription model.
So spend less than $2,000 now to save $100,000 later. The math is pretty undeniable.
And it's the convenience. The source says you can be printing your plan in about an hour from home. That removes the I don't have time excuse.
I do have one question, though. I'm thinking about putting all my financial info online. Is it, safe?
A totally valid concern. The source addresses it directly. They use bank-level security, SHA-256 encryption. They argue it's as safe as your online banking, which most of us already use every single day.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. The sources talk about the end result being a legacy protection binder.
Yeah, it's the physical symbol of being prepared. One binder with all the documents. The trust, the powers of attorney, the living will, it's the instruction manual for your family.
It's that feeling of just being organized. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I've got this handled.
And that's the feeling that's missing for those 20,000 families mentioned in the text. The expert talks about 20,000 families currently stuck in the Arizona probate system. He says they all plan to do this someday.
But someday never came.
Someday never came. And now their families are paying for it financially and emotionally.
That's the real takeaway for me. It's not about the money. In the end, it's about the burden you leave behind.
It really is. The source asks a final question that I think we should leave our listener with. It asks, if something happened to you tomorrow, would your family know what to do, or would they be stuck with the government's plan?
And to follow up on that, is your privacy and your legacy worth an hour of your time today? It really makes you think. We spend more time planning a vacation than we do planning for this.
Absolutely. It's about taking control back from the state and keeping it where it belongs, with your family.
Well, that is a lot to digest, but hopefully it gives you a clearer picture of why this all matters. No matter what you're worth, you have a legacy worth protecting.
Stay safe out there.
We'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.